I am thrilled to introduce North Carolina State Superintendent Truitt today. We at America Succeeds are massive fans of Superintendent Truitt's work in North Carolina over the past 4 years. And before we get into the meat of this interview, I just want to go through some of her many accomplishments in education, which include spending a decade as a teacher in both middle and high schools, spending 3 years as a school turnaround coach in underperforming school districts, working as the senior education advisor in North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory's administration, serving as chancellor of nonprofit Western Governors University in North Carolina, where she focused on increasing access to higher education for millions of North Carolinians with some college but no degree. And finally, being elected state superintendent in North Carolina in 2020, challenging time indeed, where she guided the state's education systems through the COVID-19 pandemic, helping to create the conditions for students to return to the classroom very quickly, and has since helped the state make massive strides in literacy and reading levels, providing comprehensive student support services, and pushing for innovative measures that have helped the state to focus on preparing students to not only enter, but succeed in the workforce. And I'm very excited to speak with you today. And so just as a quick intro to this first set of questions for our listeners, Operation Polaris is the 4-year strategic plan for North Carolina public schools that was set in motion in April 2021 by Superintendent Truitt. This plan includes a variety of forward-thinking measures and initiatives intended to help North Carolina schools use data-driven decisions to evolve and face the challenges at hand in regard to improving student learning outcomes and post-secondary readiness. So my first question to you today is, can you just provide a quick summary of Operation Polaris and what you think makes it unique as a strategic plan?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question, Aiden, and for this opportunity today. I love that you described America Succeeds as being massive fans. That is just an incredible compliment, because it was actually my team and I saw America Succeeds present at a major statewide K-12 education reform conference, and we were inspired by the work of America Succeeds in including the Portrait of a Graduate into our strategic plan. So I'll just back up briefly and say that Operation Polaris, as you said, is our agency's 4-year strategic plan. And I think that what's important for your listeners to know is that, the state superintendent in North Carolina and in most states really doesn't have a lot of authority or, regulatory authority over local superintendents. Certainly governors and legislatures, depending on the state, are really calling the shots when it comes to education policy and, what happens on the ground in local districts. And so I knew that we needed to create a strategic plan that would be something that the agency could work on and do so in a way that could involve external stakeholders, like legislators, like the governor's office, like local superintendents and other district leaders. And so that document was written to be very intentional and strategic about the ways that we wanted the agency to work to benefit students, educators, communities, and the workforce. I hired an advisor who does nothing but advise me on K-12 and workforce issues. She's plugged into the community college system, to our higher ed system, credentialing, all of those things that feed into ensuring that kids are employed, enlisted, or enrolled after graduation. So I would just say that my 25 years working in education really culminated in Operation Polaris and sort of defining how do we need to help students recover from the pandemic while also looking at persistent, long-standing challenges in public education.
That's a great summary. Thank you so much. And I definitely hear you on the sort of variation in how much influence a Department of Public Instruction or Department of Education has in different states. Yeah. So I just, as a follow-up, I want to ask, What were some of the conditions and leadership strategies at the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction that contributed to the development and implementation of Operation Polaris?
Yeah. So if we go back to 2021, as you alluded to in your introduction, I was sworn into office in January of 2021. Schools were closed. It was the thick of the pandemic. And North Carolina, along with other states, had just received an unprecedented infusion of federal dollars into our schools. And there was a legislative long session that began in early February.
Mm.
So it was a challenging time, but also a time that was really ripe for innovation. And we decided to seize on that opportunity. So knowing that 90% of those dollars were going to go to districts, we wanted to make sure that districts knew that we had their best interest at heart and that the department was there to support them. So I think that when we devised Operation Polaris, and we looked at things like literacy, human capital challenges that are not just unique to North Carolina, student support services, problems with our accountability and testing, and the fact that, you know, we use one and done high stakes testing largely to determine the grade of a school, the public facing grade of a school. So in other words, how we define school quality and student success is based on those end of grade high stakes testing. I think that those four areas really resonated with local superintendents. And so while historically, perhaps local superintendents may not be a fan of the state education agency, we really wanted to change that narrative and create a strategic plan that would support districts. And I would just point to, for example, our literacy work in April of 2021, the Excellent Public Schools Act was passed. And that was the act that leveraged both state and federal dollars to require all pre-K through fifth grade teachers to undergo science of reading professional development. We went with letters from Lexia, which is the same professional development that Mississippi had used, very much aligned to the science of reading. And what I can tell you is that during the 2023-24 school year, the percentage of our kindergarten students who are on track at the end of the year, on track for core instruction and reading, grew by 40% from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, compared to the national average of about 25%. And we're seeing that kind of growth sustained across all of our subgroups. So double-digit growth for our African American, Hispanic, and American Indian communities.
Wow, that is extremely impressive, and goes to show just what happens when institutional leaders believe in science. So I love all that.
Yes, yes, that's right. We need to free the data.
Very good. Next is, so what approaches and policies were effective in securing stakeholder buy-in and building capacity for Operation Polaris 2.0?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I think that speaks to the quality of a state education agency. You know, it was really important for me to hire a team when I came to office who were experts in their field. I hired a lot of people who had been local leaders in their district. I hired someone who had been an associate dean at a college of education who I knew would speak to a community that I was not incredibly familiar with. And, you know, someone who had a PhD in research who could really make sure that we were using research and data to ground all of this work. But, you know, the Operation Polaris was always meant to be an evolving playbook, one that would allow us to collaborate with as many external partners as possible, not necessarily be top down, but something that would allow us to form work groups comprised of leaders from the department as well as outside of the department, and also involving the business community. I think that's something that is really important. It's part of changing this narrative that you know, the purpose of third grade is to get ready for fourth grade. No, the purpose of third grade is to eventually prepare students for the post-secondary plans of their choice. And I think that that when we talk about in a minute the evolution of the portrait of a graduate, you'll see how key it was to include employers and workforce development experts in this work.
That's great. Yeah, I love your highlighting the sort of collaborative nature of education reform at the state level. And on the employer side, we at America Succeeds are always trying to gather employer feedback on what they need from students who are graduating high school or college or credentialing programs. So we are very big believers that the future of American education is a collaborative effort that involves many different stakeholders, and not just those who have been sort of long steeped in these education systems that we've built.
That's right.
Great. So to sort of set up this next set of questions about the portrait of a graduate, for listeners, I just want to say that portrait of a graduate initiatives are sort of system-wide visions for schools and districts to use that frame the skills, dispositions, and academic outcomes that define sort of what student success should and could look like. As America Succeeds has led the Durable Skills Initiative over the past 4 years, we have seen the value of these portrait visions, but we know that the process of creating the portrait and the strategies used to sort of effectively implement the portrait vision are where the rubber really meets the road in terms of changing student outcomes. So with that, I just want to ask, can you tell us about how the portrait was created in your state?
Yeah, so I knew that many states had portraits of a graduate. Our neighbor to the north in Virginia has an incredible portrait of a graduate that I've always been envious of. And when knowing that we wanted to do that, it was very timely when we saw America Succeeds present at Excel in Ed, my first year in office. And it just sort of hit me like a bolt of lightning. Our portrait of a graduate needs to be aligned to workforce development. In other words, we have a critical need for students to develop skills outside what we would consider traditional technical skills and academic knowledge. So we know from data and research that durable skills, and by the way, I love that you call them durable skills. These are skills that will last a lifetime and are frequently skills that are not tested in traditional end of grade testing. But durable skills are in high demand among employers and beneficial to students regardless of what path they choose, whether it's college, career, or military. And we also went into this knowing that our accountability system would not be able to, in its current state, measure those durable skills, and that we would need to provide a more comprehensive picture of what student success means. So we thought that the portrait would be that more balanced measure, demonstrating a student's growth and achievement and ensuring their readiness for life after high school. I think one of the pieces of data that I would recommend all of your listeners learn about their own state is what percentage of students in your state are graduating from high school every year and attaining a 2 or 4 year degree. You could also put not just a 2 or 4 year degree, but also credentials into that statistic. It's a little bit harder to measure, but our best estimates are that about 31% of students are getting any kind of credential 2 or 4 year degree within 6 years after graduating from high school. So by age 24, and that's not good enough. So that is one of the statistics that was driving this work. So we want students to gain exposure to a variety of career options that they may not know even exist. Students can't become what they can't see. So we want that exposure to come early and often. And we want for community organizations and businesses to interact with students as well, because those partnerships are really valuable as we seek to make sure that all high school students have a plan after graduation.
That's great. Yeah, I love that piece of the plan, a plan for your career and a plan for where you want to go in the short term when you graduate high school. I was personally, I'm a huge fan of this because I was fortunate enough to go to a great public school in Southern California. However, you know, career planning, looking around at different options, and interfacing with employers and community stakeholders to sort of get a feel for what it's like to be in the professional world was not a huge emphasis in my high school. So personally, it makes me very excited that so many states are delving into this area now.
Same.
So second question there is just how are districts and schools in North Carolina translating this portrait into teaching and learning experiences for students?
Yeah. So we developed the portrait in 3 phases. And of course, the first phase was just identifying the durable skills that graduates need. The second phase was creating resources that allow teachers to integrate the durable skills. So we created rubrics that teachers could use in their daily lesson plans. And then the third phase is what I call the make it as easy as possible phase. We designed activities or performance tasks to give to teachers that are aligned to the North Carolina Standard Course of Study so that they are, in essence, lesson plans for teachers to use with their students where the work is done. We don't want to make more work for our teachers. We want to make things as easy as possible. So over this past summer, we launched those first set of performance tasks to the public. And what I think is so exciting is that these lesson plans were created by teachers for teachers. They are student tested, standards aligned, and ready to be used across the state. And they are K-12. So this can start as early as kindergarten and go all the way through the 12th grade.
That is super impressive. Yeah, as I've been doing some of my portrait of a graduate and implementation research, I have noticed definitely that while some states are working on this stuff, I think North Carolina and your neighbors to the south, South Carolina, are some of the best models for how you can actually support your teachers and your districts and your school leaders directly to implement this kind of stuff. And those performance tasks and rubrics and everything else that goes along with it are just so critical in making sure that you're not adding time to a teacher's day in terms of trying to teach this stuff.
That's exactly right. Our teachers have a lot to do already. So we do want to make it as easy as possible.
That's great. So building on that, what strategies or policies are crucial for states to achieve effective implementation of any educational framework, but some like the Portrait of a Graduate? And what features of the current policy landscape in North Carolina support that?
Yeah, so you don't want to create a Portrait of a Graduate in isolation, whether it's isolated within the state agency. So ours was a grassroots effort. We have 8 education regions in our state, and our partner in this work, Battelle for Kids, really helped us with the logistics and coordination of being able to not just touch all 8 regions in the state, but also to include folks from the community college system, parents, students, our higher ed partners, as well as faith-based communities and employers. So that's first. That's as far as strategy goes. Making it grassroots is, I just think, incredible advice. The other thing I would say is that there are, to this idea about not creating it in isolation, you want to make sure that you have some other supporting policies in place to bolster this work. One of them for us was getting a computer science graduation requirement passed, which we did last year. So this is computer science is really not about being an elective. It's about what students need in order to be successful after high school, regardless of what they're doing. So I think it was a 2024 Work Trend Index from Microsoft and LinkedIn said that 66% of leaders say they won't hire someone without AI skills. So this is only going to increase. Computer science is a must. And if you think about this, it's a graduation requirement. Computer science is the first area that, content area that has been added to content area canon, if you will,
Sure.
since the turn of the century, the last turn of the century, not the most recent turn of the century. So, you've got biology, English, history, math, and computer science. The other thing that I would say that we did well was getting career development plan legislation passed. We want to make sure that all students that have equitable supports when thinking about their career goals and the preparation that they need to achieve them before they start high school. It's almost too late, really, to start in high school.
Yep.
We need for parents to be involved in this as well. So starting this year, all seventh grade students, or we might change it so that it's middle school students in general, but certainly before the eighth grade, we want for all students to have career development plans using some kind of platform that districts choose, like Major Clarity or Zello, something like that, to help get those plans going. It will follow the student into high school and will make workforce readiness an integrated part of every child's education. We want durable skills to be second nature to our students and their teachers.
That's amazing. We hope that in the next 5 to 10 years, all states are saying that exact same line. I might save that one, just that little soundbite.
Absolutely.
That's great. I actually didn't know about you guys making computer science a graduation requirement. That is awesome work.
Yeah.
I know I regret not learning more about that stuff and about AI tools in high school and college. Can you just give?
Yeah, I've been watching my own children, two of whom have graduated from high school in the past few years, take those courses while they're in high school, and of course that's just such a very different landscape than even 10 years ago.
Absolutely. Yeah, this might be a question for another interview, but like what does a computer science course that's grounded in building AI schools look like in North Carolina?
Well, there are about 30 different computer science courses that various districts were already offering, and they all will have some sort of AI linked into it. So a lot of the courses that have been offered already are some basic coding courses that some of our districts were getting, but some were not. And that's an inequity, because if you live in a part of the state where you have people on tap who can come in and teach those because, they work at SAS or, in Research Triangle Park, that's great. But we need to make, and we have through a partnership with code.org, made these kinds of courses available to our more rural parts of the state. I would also say that our state was the fourth, I believe, in the country to issue AI guidance to our districts. I'm sure more have done that since we did, but we did it last January. And offering that AI guidance preemptively before teachers could kind of run away from it, which I totally understand is the first instinct. We even had one of our large districts ban ChatGPT from the district, and that's I understand that reaction, but that's not the solution. So we got in front of it, we issued the guidance, and we've gotten amazing feedback from our districts.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's such a challenging conversation around the country, and I think exactly what you're saying, getting out in front of it and making sure that schools and teachers are prepared for it instead of running away from it. It has to be the right strategy.
Yes.
Great. So just to build on some of the sort of strategies and policies that you guys have used, how should state accountability systems evolve to measure the imparting of durable skills in students and to ensure equity across different regions and districts?
Yeah. This is such a passion of mine and something that we've not been able to get across the finish line yet legislatively, because of course our state accountability model sits in legislation. But let me start by saying that testing and accountability are absolutely necessary. I would never advocate for diminishing the importance of or lessening the what I think is an appropriate amount of testing in our schools. We have to test students and we have to measure teacher growth as well as student growth. But just like one test doesn't define a student, one letter grade is not adequate to define school quality. So as our model stands now, we have a singular letter grade of A through F for all schools based on 80% achievement and 20% growth. But I just feel very strongly that this does not give real visibility into what and how schools prepare students for success and life beyond the classroom. If we want to make sure that public schools are providing students with the opportunity to pursue the post-secondary pathway of their choice, then the model used should measure that instead of just reflecting on how well students are prepared on standardized tests. And if you think about it, in a high school, maybe only 10 to 20% of teachers are teaching a tested subject. And yet those school performance grades are so heavily weighted on standardized tests and the growth on those standardized tests. So we've proposed that instead of one letter grade, there should be four: a proficiency growth score, a proficiency score, a growth score, an opportunity score, which is focused on ensuring that kids have quality learning experiences in their schools, intra and extracurricular activities offered by schools. 30% of kids in North Carolina are chronically absent right now. Kids cannot learn if they're not at school, and school climate. And then we suggested a readiness score as the fourth measurement, which would be also a new addition focused on that preparedness for life after graduation. So that could include the extent to which schools are following the career development plan legislation, internship and job shadowing opportunities, and then looking at the percentage of students who are employed, enlisted, or enrolled after high school. Aiden, there are too many students who cross the graduation stage every year and have no plan, despite the fact that about 72% of kids every year say when they're juniors, yes, I'm going to college.
Right. The lack of a plan is just a travesty. And it's something that I feel like schools are actually well equipped
Yes.
to help students with, as
Agreed.
opposed to some other changes that are in the education reform agenda. That's one that, is on deck.
And let me say too that we did an extensive research project with a nonprofit education news outlet in North Carolina, that we got tens of thousands of participants on this survey, combination of parents and educators, and 90% favored a grading approach that includes measures beyond test scores and student growth.
Wow. That's fantastic. And I love your guys' focus on, getting more granular in how you assess school quality, teacher quality, how much students are learning. I think I heard you talk about the opportunity score, which I don't know if I've seen before. I'm not an accountability expert, but that one sounds like something that every state should be doing, right? Like that's just core.
I think so.
That's great. All right. Well, that concludes my questions today, and I just appreciate your time so much and all the thoughtful answers you gave us. I want to reiterate that we at America Succeeds think that the work you have done throughout your tenure as state superintendent provides a very strong model for the type of progress that other states should be attempting to make over a 4-year period. And we are just super excited about the future of public education in North Carolina.
Well, thank you very much. And we here in North Carolina appreciate the work of America Succeeds.
That's great to hear. We'll keep doing it.
Thank you.